Welcome back to the Flex Diet Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Mike T. Nelson. On this podcast, we talk about ways to increase body composition, performance, and add some muscle. Do all those things in a flexible based approach without destroying your health. And today we've got a little bit of a divergence from that. We're talking more to trainers and coaches today with my buddy Andrew Coates. And we have a wide range of things that we're talking about. Everything from speaking at events. So, how do you get selected? What is his personal history with that? And even going to live events. I first met Andrew in person at the Fitness Summit many years ago. So, I was speaking there, got to hang out with him, and I've been able to see him at many different events, see him speak at other events such as Raise the Bar this past year, the Coaches Summit in Vegas, and many other ones. So we talk about speaking at events, what are things you should do if you're looking to do that, why you should learn how to write, even if your goal is to do videos and to speak. I still think learning to write is a skill that will be very useful for you. Andrew's written for TMAG and many other publications. The role of social media. Andrew did a great talk at the Raise the Bar seminar about the influence of social media and how it can be useful. Also talk about online mentorships, and he gives some ones that he's done that he recommends. As of this recording, you'll notice in the podcast I wasn't sure if I was going to do the online mentorship, the Flex Diet one again, and I've decided to do it. Unfortunately, depending upon when you listen to this, it might be a little bit late, but there will be an application down below that you can fill out if you are interested in doing that. This podcast will be out on Monday, July 17th, 2023. And I'm probably only keeping applications open through Thursday night or possibly Friday, July 21st at the very latest, because we will start on July 24th, 2023. So if you are interested, go and apply there. You'll find a link below in this podcast. We would love to have you. We also talk about income from speaking. It's probably not what you think. The pros and cons of running your own online business, trading time for money, and as I mentioned at the top, why you should go to live events. So Andrew will be speaking at many different events coming up, including his own event up there in Canada. So make sure to check him out. If you are interested in the Flex Diet mentorship, you have until Friday at midnight, July 21st, 2023 to apply. We'll have an application link down below. So enjoy this wide-ranging chat with Andrew Coates.
It's good to see you, brother. How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing, man?
Oh, fantastic. There's lots to juggle getting ready for a lot of events in the second half of this year. So you got it up.
Not too many events coming up. The only one is if recording, I'll be doing a talk on a primer on psychedelics, our psychedelic supplements next at the International Society of Sports Nutrition. So that'll be June 15th through the 17th. So that's the next one I have. And then the Northeastern Conference in October. So I'll be presenting there with a fair amount of CrossFit people like Chris Henshaw, Bart Bartholomew will be there, Kelly Starrett, Dan John. So yeah, those are only two right now.
Cool.
Yourself?
It's busy enough. There's one called the Leo Conference. It's Michael Palmieri's thing. That's in Vegas in July. And then as far as I'm concerned, that's a precursor into being a part of the Olympia U thing that Michael does, which again, getting to speak at the Olympia would be really amazing.
That's cool.
That looks really good. The July one is set. And then what do I have? I'm blanking here. Oh, I've got Cantor Pro's conference and global conference and trade show that's in Toronto, August 18th and 19th. I'll be there I got a keynote and a couple of panels and a fireside. And Luca's going to be there. Lee Boyce is going to be there. Melody Schoenfeld's there. There's a Michael Mash and Barbell Reed. There's a whole Nick Lamb. And then like they've got a crazy thing going on. There's gonna be like a ton of stuff. There's a big expo.
Oh, that's very cool.
And then there's maybe something in the work for Costa Rica in September. We'll see if Nick is able to pull that one together. And then I'll my event, so 13th and 14th. So we should have the website registration open like it's supposed to be this week. We'll see if that actually happens or not. And then there's some stuff that is still maybe-ish for December. I'm waiting on word to see if it's still a go, but it's been good. Oh yeah, and then Dean and Jeb have their Compound Performance thing coming up in June or early July, their virtual event.
Where's the Costa Rica event? Do you know what part of Costa Rica?
It is literally just talk at this point. So I don't know if, and it's going to be like, apparently it's like a small, the Nick's hope is to get like Luca and me and Joel Jameson and a couple other people, and we'll see if that works because we all got a pal down there, and he would be coordinating with one of our guys.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, because I'll be at Ben House's place the week right before the ISSN, so I'm flying directly from Costa Rica to ISSN, but I'm just hanging out and chilling and doing whatever. So
Nice. Yeah, I don't have any details yet because these things tend to get talked about and then they don't always come together. So I guess we'll see.
yeah, and as you're trying to get everybody's schedule on a singular date, and then you add a different country and you add people from the US, Canada, etc., it's a lot harder than it used to be, and it never was easy.
And there are more events than ever because I may lose one of my speakers. I have a boatload of options, but I may lose Christian Thibodeau from my event because of scheduling issues. And Swiss is the week after our event.
Yep.
And he can't miss that. But he promises his wife that he will only do one a month. And the Olympia is 2 weeks after that. And Kenny Santucci, my buddy in New York, wants to do Strong New York, but he's frustrated because there's already so many events in place, and the venue he had, we were tripling the cost for him. And so he might just say, the hell with it. And then Luke is going to do bigger Fitness and Business Summit next year.
Ah, okay.
He's got so many things going on this year. He's a part of so many events. So he's this far out committing to that event next year. So there's just so much stuff. And you got stuff like Aram's event is now like, that was a hit. So he's going forward with that, and Raise the Bar is a hit, and they're going forward with that. And then many more. Said all of the NSCA stuff. It's back. It is back.
Yeah.
Is back and crushing it. Seminars are crushing it.
Which is a good thing. And it's always hard because the timing will always be the worst possible one. So when I committed to the NEC one was literally a year ago. And I was like, great, everyone else looks great. That's awesome. I love the promoter. It's awesome. I'm super stoked for it. And the Swiss conference is literally the same weekend. So a buddy of mine a couple months ago was like, hey, you ever thought about presenting at Swiss? I'm like, oh, dude, that'd be like amazing. I said, they don't have the dates yet. He's like, I've known Ken for years. He's awesome. I've been to Swiss, amazing event. And I'm like, you know what'll happen? It'll be literally the same weekend that I'm already committed to speaking. And yep, it is. That's just like the way it goes.
And Swiss is one of those super events. It'd be cool.
Oh, yeah.
I got a friend who's like pushing to connect me through it. And I'm like, that would be incredible. However, again, I have my own event the week before, and I'm at the Olympia the week after it. So I don't know if I can survive that run of everything. That would be too much.
So what do you enjoy the most about speaking at events? Because we're obviously already in the podcast and we're recording here and stuff. So that's just the way it goes.
It's weird. So I've noticed that there's definitely like a really big desire for coaches to want to be in that space, emerging coaches, becoming coaches, established coaches. And I think that's an incredible aspiration. I have noticed that some coaches look at it like that I've made it. That's a status thing. You're A-list all of a sudden. And then they crave being treated the way that they think the speaker tier circuit gets treated. And I don't think that's really the reality. And I also think that's the wrong way. The status seeking way of going about things is really the answer. So there's going to be a long-winded answer. When my first speaking event was Tim Arndt asking me to fill in for Greg Knuckles because Greg couldn't make his 2021 IFCA, and Tim was going with it. Mid 2021, shit was still crazy. So it's not.
Oh yeah.
The turnout wasn't going to be that big. And initially I'm like, did you go back around and ask Lee Boyce again? He's no, man, I want you to do it. Right. And By this point, my social media was growing and obviously I had more writing stuff. So Tim was very insistent and wanted me to do it. So I said, okay, I'll do it. So I got help with some PowerPoint stuff. I asked Luca, I'm like, hey, Luca, like, what book should I read about public speaking? Because I've done podcasting well, but podcasting is not public speaking. So I leaned into it and I figured it
What
out.
book did he recommend? I'm curious.
I did the Presentation Secrets of Steve Jobs and Talk Like TED. And they were actually
Cool.
those
Nice.
super helpful.
Perfect.
And there's a few other like little principles you learn. You understand that physiologically, the experience of anxiety, nervousness, anxiety, and excitement are actually very similar physiological things. So you can actually tell yourself, listen, I'm not nervous, I'm excited. And that actually works, right? To a point. So anyway, lean into it, went, did it, really prepared. So I knew my stuff. It went really well. It was a smaller audience. So it was a perfect chance to get my feet wet. And then my buddy Luke Carlson, who you met because
Discover Strength.
I mean, yeah, exactly. So you and me were hanging out at the Resistance Exercise Conference,
REC.
Minneapolis, the next year. So Luke was one of the other speakers. Luke asked if I would come and do a talk at that event. And he wanted me to do it like the Vegas November one of that year. I couldn't swing it, but next year I was in. And then other people who I had attended and showed up and supported their stuff, like I showed up and supported Tim's event, started asking me, poking around about stuff. Word got out, reputation a little bit, that people would show up to see me. And then I got more invitations. I got invited to speak at Kenny Strong, New York, and I got invited to speak at the IFCA, which is a Scottsdale event. Jordan Duggar and Aaron Diamond do it. And then there was Kabuki Strength, a buddy of mine worked for them at the time. So he recommended me for that. And then at the time, I'd also started getting connected with Nick Lamb and Derek Mendoza. And so I went and attended Raise the Bar. First year they did it in Orlando, right? And then they asked me to do, or Nick asked me to do his Recovery and Sleep online, which I did. And then the next year I'm in the lineup for Raise the Bar, and just things keep spiraling and mushrooming. So I think I did 8 events last year. It's somewhere between 8 and 10 on this year. And I didn't seek this out. It wasn't something I'm like, ooh, I want to go do this. If anything, the old imposter syndrome is like, no, I don't even think about myself in this light. But people keep asking, the results keep happening. And then you lean into it, you find it's incredibly fulfilling. It's an incredible opportunity to share, I guess, career success, wisdom that can actually help other coaches, especially if you approach it from giving them stuff that's really going to be useful for them. And what I find is people, when I announced my event, I had a whole bunch of people, virtually all had really no public speaking pedigree. And I want to be careful how I frame that, or messaging me going, hey, can I talk to you about coming and speaking at your event? And I'm just like, guys, no, I'm sorry. Because I had a clear cluster of people, primarily Canadian speakers, some pretty big brand names like Don Saladino, Luca Hocevar, and Dr. Gabrielle Lyon up from the US. And now I've since added Kelsey Heenan to that. And then my Canadians are people like Dean Somerset, Brian Cron, Lee Boyce, some legacy T Nation guys, Christian Thibodeau, although Tibbs may have a scheduling conflict now, Dr. Sam Spinelli, Krista Scott Dixon at PN, Logan Dubé, Hannah Gray. I am missing some, Muscle Doctor Jordan Shallow, right? So there's some pretty superstar Canadians on top of it.
Oh, yeah.
And so I wanted a lineup that people would look at this and go, holy shit, there's no way I can miss this. Kind of what the boys did with Raise the Bar. And so I think it's incredibly fulfilling to get to do it. I think most coaches who aspire to do it still need to be the ones butts in seats attending, learning from that, because I think that's what they're going to get a lot more out of. And this is going to be blunt, but if the only person who's going to benefit from you speaking is your status, then it's the wrong reason. It's not going to happen if it builds you up. It's got to be something where people got to look at that lineup and go, oh, wow, I can't wait to see them speak. I'm really excited about this. And you may think that's true. It probably isn't at this stage. And this is like cold, hard truth. And this also comes from relentless relationship building within the community you have. You absolutely crush. You've been doing this for so long you're one of the people I always mention, like crushes on email list. You have a community of people who've done your certification, who've done your work, and you built relationships with through doing this for a really long time. So when people see Mike T. Nelson, on the lineup of an event, they're like, cool, I got to go. And so that's the sort of thing you got to build to. And when it comes to social media, it's interacting with people on social media in a way that shows up, supports, helps them. There's a ton of stuff going on my DMs all the time. I'm always answering questions. I try to respond to comments the best I can. I will anything in my DMs other than spam, I will literally respond to. And sometimes I fuck with the spammers, right? Teach them a little bit of a lesson, which is really a waste of your time. But if you pour that time and effort into giving back to people in any form, not just when it comes to speaking, but with the articles you write, if everything is totally of a being of service mindset, then that will actually lead to career opportunities that a lot of people crave and seek. But I still try to redirect people to say, don't try to like crave and work for us. Don't just go around asking for everything. Don't ask to come on the podcasts. Don't ask to write for the stuff. Build a library of work and just be of service to the point where people notice and they say, I need you to come and be a part of this. I want you to come and write for our thing. And sometimes that's doing it for your own website. It's doing your own podcast, building. The best thing that Dean Guido and I ever did when we started was to have our podcast. And of course, Dean obviously moved on. She's got a little kid to raise, but that's the most powerful connectivity and relationship building vehicle there is. And it's probably a very critical part to a lot of the cool stuff that's happened. Now I know I wandered very far afield there, but I think
No, it's good.
it's some career wisdom. I think there's a lot of coaches listening to this, right?
Oh yeah, it's a mix of, if I had to say, probably 30 to 40% coaches, the rest kind of higher end fitness enthusiasts. It's always hard to get exact data on podcasts. If I look at my email list right now, it's about 60-40, 60% coaches, trainers, 40% kind of higher end fitness enthusiasts.
We'll make sure we try to give something useful to the enthusiasts as well.
Yeah. And I figured like podcasts, like even like writing newsletters, I think it was Tim Ferriss said this once, like, I like having specific topics and specific people on so you can explore everything in that area, even though every topic is not going to appeal to everyone, which is fine. So I'll have some stuff like this that is going to be a little bit more geared to trainers and coaches, other stuff, a little bit more general population, other stuff more on hypertrophy. And over time, it's all within the sort of same wheelhouse, and people can pick a little bit of what they want. Because I think just like speaking, if you're trying to appeal to everyone all the time, oh God, that is like the recipe to go nowhere fast and to pull all your hair out.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's not the way to approach any of your media. You and I were talking about this because we both spoke at the Real Coaches Summit.
Yeah.
It was like the Real Coaches Summit, our buddy Rob Grigorian was amazing. I think it was like 85% women turned out.
Definitely. That was surprising to me.
That was a crazy skew. A lot of it was Eve Guzman, who I think she brought 60 women from her mentorship alone.
Yeah.
And we were talking about how, like, in theory, your stuff, it seems like it would just be like play to bros, but apparently, like, what your audience skews and women just love your media as well.
It's so weird because, like, for years, like on the newsletter, you can get I've done surveys and stuff to get just information. And so for years, like literally most of my writing is to like the average dude bro, age 30 to 50, looking to add some muscle, but still likes performance, but tends to screw himself up in the gym. But for years, and even now, 80% of my one-on-one clients would be females. And I'm like, wait, this doesn't make any damn sense. Like, I don't write to females like at all. And so I started asking some of them, and then I realized that all the concepts are the same. But what I was saying was so opposite of what, not so much now, but especially 5-6 years ago, was so opposite of what female trainers were saying to female clients, that they had tried all those other approaches and it didn't work. And so even though technically my marketing was horrible, like I should change how I'm speaking, but I never did because I'm like, it was working. So what do I care? So the thing is, it doesn't always end up how you think it's going to end up. But I also think by trying to write to one specific person in one specific area, you'll gather people that resonate with that and you'll offend the people that don't. And that's more of the key than worrying about this hyper specific gender. I only write to dads who are 42 years old, who have 2.5 kids and live in the suburbans and all that stuff. I think you'll drive yourself bonkers.
I'll give an example of this phenomenon, right? Because realistically, you're just being authentically yourself. And I find that your generation, that's like legacy T Nation generation, kind of just figured this stuff out as they went. And I know there was a stronger affiliate network there and people were learning from people, but I really don't think anybody was teaching, okay, this is the formula. You go through my curriculum of business coaching, you use this tactic. You can see now with your friends on coaches on Facebook and that you see a certain post, you're like, I know where that came from because 8 other
Yep.
coaches posted the exact same thing, tactic, almost word for word. One of my big pet peeves. You see someone do this shit is I'm trying to remember exactly how this is worded. Hey, I'm clearing out space on my friends list for new people. If you want to stay here, to some effect, if you want to stay here, please comment, pay, or some sort of bullshit in the thing below. And I've seen this several times, and I almost always remove the friend. And sometimes
Mhm.
light them up and I say, this is garbage. Imagine forcing people to suffer the indignity of begging to stay on your friend list. Fuck off.
Yeah.
And I know it's a tactic and I know where it comes from. I know exactly the business coach where this is coming from. And there's probably smart stuff within that, but these lazy tactics for engagement just, I think, are so degrading and so transparent that I hate it. Now, further thing, we all have those teenage business coaches or copywriters or appointment setters in our DMs. They literally look like they're 13 years old. They have no followings. They all have the same bio and they're all sending largely the same messages or the spam we get in our emails, which is all the same crap too. So we know that these people are doing some course somewhere. They're all learning the same stuff and they're all spamming all the same people out there. Right. So someone's teaching this nonsense and, but everybody's doing it the same. It's all cookie cutter and more. I'm noticing it with coaches that their marketing and their media is also becoming cookie cutter. Now, you and I are also not their target audience. We're not their
Right.
potential customer. But when I see this stuff, I'm like, there's nothing that differentiates you. There's nothing that brings you, your personality to the surface. And in a lot of cases, I don't think there's much by the way of career accomplishment, which again, there's also hindsight bias, there's survivorship bias and my own filter through all of the cool, but lucky things that happen along my career. Sure, there was effort, what have you, but I was in the right place, the right time more than it makes sense. So that's led to the cool stuff I've done. It's not necessarily easy to replicate going to write for T Nation, writing for the other stuff, having the podcast at a major inflection point where there weren't as many podcasts. We got a bigger audience. But at the same time, I really think that these like pre-packaged formula for here's how you do your Instagram bio and here's how you approach cold DM. I hate cold DMs. Can't
Yeah.
stand it.
Yeah.
And I hope everybody listening, if you're a coach, you're recognizing this and going, oh, okay. And now here's the question like, what do you do? Maybe Mike, you and I can answer that a little bit. And for the enthusiast who sees this stuff, maybe you can recognize, wait a second. Yeah, I am noticing that a lot of these people are doing all the same things. Their marketing, their media is all the same. I've got cold DMs. So yeah, Mike, what do you think's the answer to that? To the coach who feels pressure to grow their business, to scale their business. And the options are, oh, I have to go through some sort of like online mentorship thing. By the way, I think there are good ones out there. There are people that I've literally gone to events like Jason Phillips stuff, like Jordan and Aaron stuff. I think that their way of teaching business and like how to develop it, I think is fantastic. Jonathan Goodman's Online Trainer Academy, fantastic. There are great mentors out there.
Yeah. And my biased approach, and I do teach this to a handful of people in the FlexDiet mentorship, which I may run in June, I may run in July again, just depends on my bandwidth. I turn off probably 90% of people who are interested in it on purpose because they're like, I want all the hacks, I want all the tactics, I want everything done for me. And I'm like, nope, I'll teach you how to do an online assessment. I'll teach you how to do some business stuff. I'll teach you mindset and then personal development. Like, how do you not burn yourself to a complete crisp as you're doing this? So each week it'll rotate through that for 6 months. And the business stuff is, yeah, you learn how to do podcasts and we'll answer questions, all that stuff. But I actually physically make them write shit out. And then I actually go through one by one and give them feedback on it. And even though we can talk about AI and writing posts and writing everything else and videos, there's many forms of media that I think that can work. But I think you might agree on this or not.
if you can write something out, even if writing is not your main medium of delivering it, I think that is still the best way of clarifying your thoughts and just refining your processes, period. And if you can do that and get it out to people, again, I'm biased with a newsletter, media I control, I still think that is going to stand the test of time, right? You go all the way back to the direct mail ads, whatever. I don't think that skill is going to go away. But what I've noticed is it's a very hard sell, and only a very minor portion of people will want to do that. And I'm totally cool with that because those are the people I want to work with. Everybody else, like, screw off. I don't care.
I think writing is possibly the most important and yet underrated, underrecognized skill that coaches need to have. I think it's going to be a really useful skill for everybody in life. It tends to show up in a lot of your workplaces too.
Yeah.
I mean, writing is a form of communication skill and you can learn it. There's a big shelf of books I have up here. Anybody listening wants to learn more about writing, I will literally give you a couple of books to start with. And I will, as if you work at it and go through, I will give you specific books for where you are in your journey. It's open offer, Instagram,
Perfect.
DMs, anytime. Like I love this stuff. It, writing. Okay. So first of all, most of the credible authorities in the industry, the people who are like, hey, they want to public speak, they want to, you guys craving that stuff, you want to build your career up. Virtually everybody that you follow and learn from as an authority in the industry got their start or has a strong background in writing. Dr. Lane Norton, who, yeah, a lot of video based stuff, a lot of YouTube, a lot of whatever, got a couple books. He started writing for bodybuilding.com. He was on forums, Alan Aragon,
Yeah.
T Nation, John Berardi, T Nation, your generation, your Mike Robertsons, your
Eric Cressy.
Gail Corsier, Eric Cressy's, that entire Ben Bruno writing. And then there are people who didn't necessarily go through that stuff, but you got your Mike Isertellos, your Muscle Doc, Jordan Shallows, Luca, who eventually I did pull into T Nation, still doing a lot of writing through articles I've written for other publications, and then started writing their own stuff, writing stuff like Jordan Shallows' Prescript. So
Yeah. Israel's written whole books.
some of these people also are fantastic personalities on video. Mike,
Oh, yeah.
hysterical on video and podcast, right? He's got
Oh, yeah.
for any of these sort of things. Lane is like fiery and bombastic, love him or hate him, whatever. I really enjoy Lane. You get someone like Dr. Spencer Nadolski. First time I met you was at speaking. Spencer's got a book, right? Spencer's done tons of writing stuff. Only the recent phenomena where you get people who quote blow up on social media by entertaining video-based content. On one hand, yes, there is a lot of value in having the leverage of a larger social media audience. But I would argue that most of the people who have these in the fitness space, who have these larger audiences, first of all, a healthy number of them are fake. Okay.
Oh, sure.
Or the engagement is actually fake. Okay. And it's not hard to tell if you look at the patterns. I study this stuff because I teach people how to build brand and media. Right. So and I point that out not to, it's not, oh, that baseball player's juiced, or is that bodybuilder, or is that actor on steroids? Like, okay, first of all, like people cheating in like Olympic sport, no, and encouraging like young kids. Okay, there's like a whole moral quagmire with that. We're not even going to go into that. That's off point. But let's be honest. We all grew up on a generation of baseball players and pro wrestlers and bodybuilders that were juiced to the gills, and we all loved it. And the only reason anybody had a problem with it was because it became this like moral thing in the news media, right? I liked my Hulk Hogan and Randy Macho Man Savage and Ultimate Warrior era of stuff. I loved it when Scott Steiner showed up from being like wearing the old wrestling gear to like big Papa Pup with the chainmail. He was the coolest thing ever. Love that stuff. Point being, it's not about policing like what's fake or not, but in our space about who's got a fake following versus real, we got people who, again, it's that craving for status. It's that craving for the appearance of authority. They're trying to take shortcuts and they're faking status and authority. So that doesn't work. It really doesn't work. You actually have to build this stuff, and it's a long game to invest in it. But there are some people who authentically have gone quite viral on social media, have built fairly big brands. But I would argue that people who have then turned around and failed to do other long form media, whether it's a really great podcast or ultimately a lot of writing for their own website or other publications, or translated that into relationships and public speaking, or having gone on to write a book or something, most of those people, A, they're very much at the mercy of shifts in the algorithm, shifts in platforms.
Yep.
And two, I don't think they're in a very strong position to capture, leverage, and I don't like thinking in terms of, well, we got to monetize your audience, but there's an element of truth to this. And a lot of those people, it's still, this is where social media followings becomes a vanity metric, right? I think there's a tremendous amount of value within having a larger following. You can do a lot of good with it. But when you're failing to do things that serve people with other media that helps build your business, it simply is nothing other than a vanity metric. And you can tell that by the way that people go about things, we'll say. So I think it's one of the smartest things you can do to be social media savvy, to learn how the platforms work. And your greatest growth potential platforms right now, Instagram still works very well. TikTok obviously is huge. There's only so much bandwidth we have for these things, right? I think there's people who can really thrive by just being very active on places like Pinterest. You don't build following the same sort of classical way. But thoughts back on track. I think that it's a mistake to only lean hard into social media without also building other forms of media and building the infrastructure of a sound business.
Yeah. Yeah. To me, it's like a house of cards. Like it can be useful. Like we all know people, we won't name names in the industry who, even when Facebook was bigger than Instagram, I was aghast when I met some of these people and knew good friends of them who told me, yeah, they don't really make any money. Like some are living in their mom's basement, or a lot of times their spouse would be the main incomer who had, there was a running joke is, oh, your spouse has health insurance and a job, so you don't have to make any money. You can just do whatever you want and look amazing on social media, and there's no negative to it. So I think if people knew more behind the scenes what was actually going on, they'd probably be more surprised at that. And then the second thing is when you run your own business and you're the only person doing it, my wife works for me, you have to make money. That's how you stay alive. And social media is great. And if you can leverage that into some income, getting clients or whatever, cool. But we all know some people who have a massive social media influence that if they had to monetize that, not in a bad way, but just to help people because exchange of money, exchange of value, it would be in a world of hurt.
The biggest, I've been doing this, it's creeping up on 13 years. And I came out of the commercial gym, right? I was there for 6 years. And then I brought my business over to my friend's gym where I've contracted ever since. And I've done the trade time for money in a session rate. And over time, I've gradually increased my rate. And here's the thing. You get a lot of people telling you, oh, you need to stop doing that. You go, honestly, it's the best secure backbone you could possibly have. And
Sure.
people one-on-one is incredibly fulfilling. Like my client, Larry, and I've got other retirees or you name it, busy professionals. They're great to work with, right? If you're good at setting appropriate boundaries around how everything is and filtering out the wrong kind of people, like you talked about with your mentorship. So my brain is foggy today, so I'll try to get myself back on track. But I think coaches were in too much of a rush. I think it was like 5, 6, 7, even 4 years ago to get online. And I think there's a lot of people who crush with their online businesses. I think having an online business is super smart. I was late to the game on that. I have an online business and my social media following helps feed that. No problem. But the backbone and the stability and the income has always been the in-person stuff, which has given me the latitude to then muck around with social media, playing with it. At one point, 3.5 years ago, I said, all right, I need to finally like do some Instagram to complement the fact that I'm writing for a couple of big publications. But the secure in-person business was what allowed me to start doing the podcast for fun, traveling to events where I met you and the rest of the bloody industry, which has led to so
Yeah.
much, which the podcast led to talking to Danny Sugar, which led to writing for T Nation, cool, which has subsequently led to other publication stuff. There are people that think, oh, you're gonna make a living as a paid writer. Not at this level, you don't. Like
Extremely hard.
it's a pittance. And so I don't do it because I need the income. I do it because I take great pride in being able to do these things. It's very meaningful to me. I enjoy it. I love the craft of writing. And then all of a sudden, the trips to attend these events turns into the invitation to speak at them. And they don't pay worth a damn either. If you're lucky, the whole thing gets paid for you. Cool. Awesome. And I'm at the point now where I'm like, all right, hey, don't worry about speaker fee. Just make sure you take care of my hotel, take care of my flight. I'm happy. And usually they're super happy to do that. If you're starting out, literally be willing to fly yourself to an event if you get an invitation, if that's what it takes, if you're really hungry to do this stuff. Okay. But
Caveat, just make sure you're clear on the terms ahead of time. I got hosed a few times because I was an idiot and assumed, this is years ago, it would be covered, and I didn't discuss it. And long story short, I took it in the shorts in a couple events because, to my shock, he's, oh no, this is all on your own. And I'm like, you have 210 people that just came to the talk in your gym. I know you didn't lose money. So anyway, that was my fault for not being very clear up front. What's the deal? We're both on the same page. All right, cool.
Sometimes you got to learn these lessons along the way.
Yeah.
And there have been a couple of situations where I've got a friend who's launching an inaugural event, or just they don't have the budget. I'm like, listen, you put me up, I'll take care of my flight. I'm happy to. But again, the coaching people, like all this other stuff that some coaches think, oh, you've made it. It's all like status, whatever. No, it's bonus fulfillment that I personally enjoy. Our friends, our community, we enjoy it. We feel good about it. The vast majority of the people in the space, it doesn't go to our heads. We know the ones that it does. They get a sort of a chip on their shoulder about it. And we realize it's really just an opportunity to hang out with a bunch of really cool people. We can hang out with our friends. We can meet some great aspiring coaches who I look at like I was you 6 years ago. Right. And so for me, like hosting my own event, doing this stuff, like I really love this stuff. I want to give back because all these cool things I get to do didn't happen if not for events like this. But the income has always been solid. It's always been the clientele. And I tell my clients all the time, we talk about this stuff all the time, and most of them are pretty excited about this stuff. Some of them think it's super cool. Some are completely ambivalent. They want to get the great workouts they like, but some it's wow. They think it's the coolest thing ever to see me writing for something big. But I tell them, you guys are the reason why I get to do all this cool, fun stuff, right? You're the absolute reason for this. Thank you. And I tell them that on a regular basis. You never lose sight of what this is all about. And I think some people get drawn away from that. And I have encountered people who just are in such a rush to get off the gym floor. Now, I think there are people who build great online businesses who are doing it to help people, scaling it. Amazing people with integrity. Cool. If they've been smart enough or figure out the system to do that, great. You could actually scale your impact to make the world a better place if you have a good product. But there are equally as many people who just, I don't think they actually like helping people.
Yeah.
Want status and money, and they don't want the slog, and they talk negatively about the hours we punch. Listen, I am very grateful for the hours I got to put on a gym floor. The fact that I've been mostly on my feet that entire time for a very long time has been good for my metabolic health. It's actually been really good for us. You look at that through that lens, never take for granted just how lucky we are.
Yeah. And I would say if you really want to make a lot of money, find a different industry. If you're going to really put the time and effort into it and that's like your sole thing, whatever, man, you do you. I just don't think I would start in fitness, even if I had a background in it, even if I had the knowledge base, even if I had the experience. I left the med tech industry because I worked there for 12 years, the last 4 years part-time. For a big reason is exactly what you said is I didn't want to jump 100% in and then find out, oh, can't make your house payment. Oh, like all these bills and stuff like that, because I may have tried to sell some questionable things just so I don't lose my house, or I don't know what I would have done. I didn't want to put myself in that position to find out. So I stayed there for a while, worked part-time. And then when I left, a lot of people were like, okay, wait a minute. Like you could literally go down the street to a competitor, because I'd finished my PhD at that point. I worked in mechanical engineering, had 10 plus years of experience. I could have easily made $100,000 to $120,000 a year, no question. But I would be doing something that was okay, wasn't my passion. I'm going to be working 40 to 60 hours a week. I'm going to have 3 weeks vacation. It's going to be on their schedule. It's not worth it. So again, I think there's a lot of pros to doing it, but I would say top line revenue in a short period of time, probably not one of them right away.
There's also, again, the survivorship bias of things working out for you, right? A
Oh, totally.
lot of education, great relationships, really good timing getting with the teenage stuff, which I think is a major inflection point for you. But yeah, you get to go kiteboarding and like death metal shows whenever you want. You haven't commented on my shirt either. So I don't know if you
Oh, what
recognize
does it say? Oh, nice. Little
the
Tool
reference.
shirt there. I like it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mike and I jam on. Mike's taste in metal usually skews 1 degree, one level heavier than my taste in metal, but we still appreciate the stuff.
And it's great because I think online has more flexibility, which is why I did some in-person stuff for a while, worked in gyms for a while, but I moved online sooner just because the lifestyle I wanted to do. The big turning point for me was when I was doing my PhD. I had got someone to cover my lab duties, and I was going to leave Thursday morning. So I was off Thursday. I had lab duties on Friday. I switched with another person. I did his duties on Wednesday. He covered lab for me on Friday. Was going to take a vacation to South Padre, come back on Monday. So I had booked everything. I talked to the assistant manager of the lab. Everything was cool. And then my advisor found out and literally lost his shit. And I'm like thinking, well, I asked the guy who manages a lab. I switched my thing. I'm not trying to get out of my responsibilities. Like we switched. He's no, you can't do that. You're responsible for the lab on Friday. He's if you do this, you're fired. You're out of the program. That's it. And I was like, oh. Of course, all my stuff is non-refundable. Didn't have much money at the time, and so I'm sitting around going, oh shit, what do I do? So I rebooked my flight, paid even more money, finished the labs on Friday, left Friday night, fly all the way down to South Padre, rent a car, go kiteboard Saturday and Sunday. And I flew back Monday morning, left my car at the airport, literally drove from the airport. Thank God my flight was on time to the meeting. And I walk in the door literally at the right 5 minutes before the meeting starts. And I run into my advisor and he looks at me and he goes, how was your weekend? And my first thought was, does he know I went? Does he control my weekends on top of everything else? And I just went, oh, it was good. He goes, okay. So I don't know if he knew, didn't know, whatever. I wasn't going to ask. But it was at that point, I was just like, fuck this. Like, I don't want anyone else to tell me what to do with my life, how to spend my free time. I'm not escaping my responsibilities. I'm not trying to not do the things I agreed to do. And so for me, that was like a huge turning point of, okay, if I do my own business, yes, it's going to be a pain in the ass. Yes, you work at really odd times, but I can control time and money. So if we want to go do something, yeah, I may have to work in the evening there. I just came back from South Padre, went through Texas and went through Colorado. It was great. Did I have to work some evenings? Yeah. Do I work generally 7 days a week? Yeah. Am I trying to work less? Yeah. But you get that decision I would much rather make way less income and trade time for money than make more income and not have the ability to do what I really want to do. So again, I think that's a huge perk for people looking to go through all the hassle of kind of doing it on their own, especially online.
Yeah. And I think more and more there are more people doing it, more people doing it well. We now also have the network effect of the consumer seeing online coaching as a viable, real, normal option to them. Whereas when you first started with the online coaching stuff, when there weren't a lot of people doing it, you get you guys like your Adam Bornsteins, your John Romanellos, and
Yeah.
who just were the only ones doing it initially, then it wasn't like a normal thing that consumers thought about. They're like personal training, but not in person with a personal trainer. What the fuck is this shit, right?
Yeah.
And so that that little group was the trailblazer of it, and they taught it to the people around them. But then it caught on, and then you get John Goodman, who like he was still ahead of the curve. People forget that John was ahead of the major wave, and he was the first one to build Online Trader Academy and have this product. Now there's all sorts of entities and companies, whatever.
Oh yeah.
Teach your systems. John was really the first one in a systemized and scalable version of this. And he'd been beating the drum of, hey, online trading is the future earlier than a lot of other people were. So we'll give him credit for that. But anyway, now it's more ubiquitous. So therefore it's not unexpected for someone to think that I can actually get a coach online. I can hire whoever I want from around the world, the person I like on social media, the person who writes for this magazine that I like, and I can get my programs and I can, in a lot of cases, get my nutrition, or they can separate those things or they can be together or whatever, depending on the coach. And I can do my check-ins or I can have my video calls and I can go to the gym or work out in my basement gym when I want at my convenience versus trying to fit into a trainer schedule. So there are a lot of pros. And I actually find that the type of people who self-select to do online coaching are a different type than the people who self-select in person. Actually, Dean Somerset
Oh,
this
100%.
put up a post talking about, it was an anniversary post, how long he's been doing stuff. And it mentions literally training online clients and how the type of people who self-select online tend to be more motivated. Right. And he goes into more depth. If you guys want to go check out the post, go like search for it. Dean doesn't post that many things. If there's a few days lag, you'll find the post. But he's right. And I've noticed that my online clients, by and large, tend to be, I think both online and in-person clients, accountability is still one of the biggest things that they look for. But I
Oh,
think it
definitely.
shows up in different ways. I think that booking the appointment, having to show up for it, keeps the busy lawyer with 2 kids, shit, I got to make this appointment because otherwise I'm just not going to do this on my own. Whereas the person online is okay, cool. Like I have to log these. I want to do the workouts. And I think those people are looking for the structure and to reduce some of the decision making. There's actually a lot of parallels, but it does manifest slightly differently. And funny enough, I actually find on average, the in-person client, there's also a very strong relationship dimension to the reason why they keep coming back. And that's, I think if you want to do online coaching really well, I think you actually really want to build a relationship, a lot of voice messages, video messaging, be more present versus just go, here's your week, fuck off. Give me one email. It's got to be blah, 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 blah on a Sunday. But at the same time, they're also very busy people who they don't want a whole lot of fluff and they don't want a whole lot of touch points. And what they really want is give me what I need. They're paying for the result. And here's something that I'm trying to remember who's Luca Hosfors mentioned this to me recently. And it's like, I know this, but I'm like, it, for some reason, it finally clicked after all these years that for some people, I think coaches get this idea that, all right, we give value in terms of time, and that's where we do the hour session or what have you. But for a lot of people, they're willing to pay more for an efficient result. And
Oh,
I
yeah.
think a lot of coaches get locked in this idea that somehow the amount of time we put into things has to be reflected in the price tag. And therefore, there's this fear of increasing a rate because of the boundary of time. With your level of expertise and identifying a type of client that is very busy, has a career that's very demanding, and then on top of it, there's family life. And maybe they don't want to spend 5 to 8 hours cumulatively across the time to go work out, but all the extra things that come with a lot of touch points and communicating with a coach and a lot of things that they have to go proactively do and study. Sometimes they want it laid out in front of them. They want it very efficient. They want to go do it and they want to experience the result. And they're willing to hire someone who will give that to them in a very clear cut way, in a very efficient way. And if you flip that switch as a coach and you think about this, it can get over this fear of, well, charging more or building products, building frameworks that you can deliver to coaches or to clientele that has a higher price point. And then we can get into a lot of Alex Hormozy stuff. And Hormozy is a really smart business thinker, but when you boil it down, one of the greatest contributions, and it's not uniquely his, but he really beats his drum, is understanding that if you increase your rates and you charge more, as much as people are scared shitless to do this, the customer actually gets more value out of the experience because if they're paying more for something, they will value it more and they're going to take it more seriously. It also filters and self-selects for a certain type of clientele. And Lord knows I've learned over the years, you increase your rates, then the type of people who tire kick and want discounts are not the people you want to work with because
No.
they're going to be more demanding. And it's okay if a client has expectations and has questions. Like that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the person who wants discounted training and then is grumbling because, oh, they booked 2 appointments. They have a chiropractor's appointment the same day as yours. They've known about it for 2 weeks. They forgot about it and they let you know with half an hour's notice, hey, I'm double booked. Can we move this to tomorrow? They don't want to be charged for the session. And you, the trainer, are so worried about offending this client that you're like, no, it's okay. And now you've set it up that this person can treat your session like a complete option. So that's an important boundary around your time that you gotta like nail down too. And I remember being that newer trainer who struggled with some of this stuff.
Yeah, I think everybody does. Even now, I'm not sure when this will air, but I will almost double the price on the Flex Diet Cert. And the reason for that is comparable certifications are even way more expensive, even when I double the price. And I just talked to a few people who I trust in the industry who do marketing, who have been doing fitness stuff for decades plus. And all three of them basically flat out told me, "You're a fucking idiot. Why are you only charging that money for it?" And I was like, "Oh, okay." But it's so hard with even like how much you charge for online training or in-person session because there's no solid numbers you can really look at. But what I have noticed is as I've done more things that are more expensive, and I don't know who I got this from, but it was either you do things that are on the higher end that are more expensive, and then you do stuff that's free. Try to stay somewhat out of the middle, right? Because in the middle, you're going to be like people haggling about price, and especially if it's a service, like so one on one training, that it's just a mess. Where if you have high end products, you have enough income that frees up some of your time and you can do other stuff completely for free that you enjoy doing, which is great. But if you're always in that low middle area, you get the tire kickers, the people who don't take it quite serious. The other part I don't do anymore is I don't give any discounts. Like I remember once emailing Lane Norton years ago. I've known Lane for years. And I said, "Hey man, I'm having just such a hard time with this client." This is probably 6 years ago. And I said, "I screwed up," and I gave him this big discount. And he's like, "Oh, you paid your stupid tax." I'm like, "Stupid tax?" He's like, "Yeah, you gave him a discount." I was like, "Oh, shit." And I look back historically to that point with everyone I had done up to that point, all of them were a disaster. So I was like, "All right, no more. None of that. You're either in, cool. If you're out, and it's too expensive, I get it. That's totally cool. I'm not going to worry about it." But just doing that, ironically, I got more clients, and the clients I got were much easier to work with. They all got better results. Go figure at the same time.
If I sound different, I realize I just plugged in my mic because I thought I had it plugged in, but it wasn't.
Oh, no.
Okay, good. Oh yeah, like I figured this one out a while ago too. Discounts easily one of the worst tactics. It's I see trainers do this
Especially
stuff
on a
all the time,
service product, in my opinion.
especially. There's a shift you have to make as a coach, and you have to get out of the fear of losing the client. And
Yep.
I remember being an early trainer and this client doesn't renew. Oh, crap, where am I going to get the next client? I've always been busy as hell. So it's funny looking back, but in the moment, you totally get it. You're worried
Yeah.
and you think, oh, person starts to raise a price objection or it's too expensive to continue. And you're tempted if I knock the price down a little bit. Thankfully, the old days, the old company, your rates were your rates, right? So you couldn't offer anything different. Like it kept you from doing stupid shit like that. But once you go from the fear of losing the client to when they ask for a discount and you say no, to when there's this sense of extreme satisfaction. When someone asks you, hey, oh, that's a little bit expensive, blah, blah, blah. And then you actually feel really good about saying, I'm really sorry. I have some other trainers I can recommend that at a lower price point. And then half the time they're going to take the referral. And then the other half the time they're like, oh no. And then they want to work with you anyway. So you realize, wait a second. But what another cool thing is if you're ever in a situation where you're just a little too busy to take someone on, but you can figure it out, or maybe you get a client that's maybe you don't necessarily, there was a time where a guy who turned out to be a great client, but he was a little squirrely. He was a little bit of a different dude. And I was at an inflection point where I'm like, all right, I got to raise my rates anyway. And so I'm sitting in front of this guy. I'm like, I don't even know if I want to deal with this stuff. And I don't want this to sound unethical, but it was like, all right, I asked for a higher rate and the guy didn't even fucking blink. He just
Oh,
let me
yeah.
go. And so thankfully he used to work for one of my best friends. And so I messaged my best friend and I said, yeah, blah, blah, blah. He just sat down with me and he seems like a good guy. He's definitely different. And anyway, so my friends, oh no, he's a great guy. He's an odd duck, but he's a great guy. His exact words. And he actually was a really great client while I was working with him. But that experience of asking for the higher rate and someone just metaphorically reaching for their checkbook without objection, it gives you confidence in the fact that, wait a minute, you're worth that. So uh, interesting discussion about knowing your worth. And that's fundamentally what it is. And I do think there are people who are pressuring, I think there are business vendors that are pressuring trainers to increase their rates too quickly. I think this is a
Oh yeah.
process you have to go through. We also have to understand the anchoring effect, where there are several things here. First of all, is like your rates are anchored in your mind. So anything above that rate seems expensive to you. Okay. And you're thinking, all right, that your old prices are also anchored, your existing clientele are anchored at that price. So here's a tactic that I find works really well. You don't want to ever say, oh, I'm going to leave you at this price for forever. We have lots of stories. Mark Fisher Fitness, they talked about doing this. I think Pete Dupuis, they had something similar, Cressy Sports Performance. There are other people who promised a lifetime price and then turn around later on and had to rip off the Band-Aid and go, guys, listen, this is not viable anymore. And they pissed off 5% of the people who left, and everybody else is like super, right? So don't promise lifetime prices. But what you can say to existing client is, you know what? Hey, I've been working really hard at continuing education. I'm really grateful you've been with me. So anybody brand new coming in is going to be paying this new rate, but I'm grandfathering you at this rate for 6 months or a year. And what ends up happening is it becomes a sale price for them. It becomes a thing.
Mhm.
And it also prompts them that they know that there's this date coming up in the future that their rate will go up. I've never had an objection. I've never lost a client because of that. And in fact, on more than a handful of occasions over the years, and what I also let them do is just before that time when the price increases, I'll say you can renew extra. You can get more sessions if you want. You can lock in more at that price. And I find very rarely do clients actually want to buy really big blocks of sessions. A lot of the time they're like, no, I'm happy to pay your rate. You're worth it. And I've had instances, one of my long overdue price increases a few years back, two of my clients were actually telling me I was undercharging, right?
Oh yeah.
And when this stuff happens, listen for this. There's a young coach that I train. She's actually became my partner in an online women's strength program. Her name is Bailey Lau. And so Bailey reached out to me via Instagram. She worked for another company. She was looking for an experienced trainer, boom, and a coach to mentor her with her career. So anyway, that worked out great. And so I told her my rate, and she didn't blink. She's a very quiet personality. You don't get much, she's not much emotion out of her. With her clients, she's dynamite. And so she's training with me. She's already strong, but my sweet mother of God, like she just becomes an absolute monster. Great results, hardworking. And then the pandemic stuff happens. Gyms are shut down. Our gym is handling things way better, and we're contractors. So her gym is not doing things well. So she decides, all right, she's bringing her business. Her clients all follow her to where I am. She's been thriving there ever since, loving it. We eventually decided, hey, let's build this online program. That's been a hit. Great. But I can't remember, it was like 6 months to a year later, she tells me that when I told her my rate, she was surprised. She was expecting it to be 25% higher. She didn't tell me at the spot.
Yeah.
And recently, I also had a situation where I mentor trainers one-on-one, and something similar happened when I told one of the trainers who wanted to come and mentor with me that here's my rate. And she was very surprised. She literally she's older and really sweet. You need to raise your rates. So when this stuff starts happening, it's a message. And I think it's also a product of that be of service mindset of investing in being great at what you do, studying, learning, reading the books, doing the courses, picking great mentors, traveling to events, listening to podcasts. There's an infinite array of resources out there, much of which is very inexpensive. And therefore, then you can turn around and cherry pick the ones that cost a bit more, like a trip. And it'll put you in a position where, people are just going to continue to line up to want to work with you if you're still making that person the most important thing in the universe. And then people will start telling you, you need to charge more. And I think this is actually the path to career success.
Yeah, I like that. And shameless plug in the Flex Diet mentorship, I have a method of presenting people with the per month option, which is based on your length of time, 6 months, 12 months, whatever. And then after they agree to whatever it is, you can then present them with a cash option, which you may or may not discount. And depending on the percentage of people who take the cash option versus the monthly payment, will give you some actual hard data about how cheap your prices are or if you should raise your rates. So I won't give people the exact number. They can email me if they want it, but If 100% of people are paying cash up front for a year in advance, you're way too cheap, right? So there's kind of ways I like doing that where you actually have numbers to get an idea of, and I've done those with a few people in the program, and like 80% of their clients were paying them cash up front. I'm like, see, I told you, you're way too cheap. And it's not my word. It's these people showing by their action of paying you money just in a different form that indicates like you definitely need to increase your rates. So there's ways you can do it too by using data.
I hope this one's been useful for the coaches, and I hope the enthusiasts listening at least found it interesting. And I don't know, there may be some parallels to whatever you do in your career as well, because this stuff is not necessarily unique to the fitness industry by any stretch.
No. And my last tip too would be, I got this from Ben Settle, is just always test to the sale. So if you're doing newsletters like open rates, click throughs, whatever, that's all great. But if you did a promotion for said product, like how much money did you make? How many refunds did you have? If you're doing something online, like how many clients did you get from Instagram, social media, whatever? How many people actually have skin in the game who have purchased? And I made this mistake before years ago. Sent my list this whole thing of, hey, what product do you want? Develop the whole product. And then when I went to sell it, it was like crickets. And I was like, oh, I did that backwards. So now I'll try to get an idea, but then a lot of times I'll pre-sell it. Okay, I did this with the Flex Diet Serve when it first came out. Okay, you're going to have a new module each week for these amount of weeks, and then you have to be in or out by this date. And I was like, oh, wow, that worked really good. Okay, so now I have pressure to deliver the product at that point. So there are ways around you can set stuff up to get some data and some income. But I think it's too easy to get tied up into, like we're talking about early on, engagement and how many followers and all this stuff. And it's not that those things are bad or not useful. It's just what can you do with that? And if you are a person running a business, it is a business. And at some point, you need to make a profit. And that's a good thing because that's an indicator that you are helping more people. Because I literally expect nobody to do anything with free advice I give. To me, it's like it goes out in the world, out in the ether, right? I hope some people take advice from it and do it. Some people do. But my personal expectation is probably not much. This is my gift to the world. Do with it what you want. But for paid products, like if someone hires you as a coach or they work with you in person, now you have a responsibility to do everything you can within the confines of your agreement to help them, and they have skin in the game, and their odds of actually getting said result are astronomically higher too. I think those two facts get lost a lot of times, that it's easy to get sucked into the hole of doing everything for free, assuming that you're helping. You'll get lots of positive feedback, but in terms of action, I find it's much lower.
And to parallel that, again, and I said this earlier, I think you get your business house in order, right? And maybe the stuff that's being sold in the industry, the sexier stuff, maybe that we don't rush to that. Like metaphorically or literally the in-person business. You make sure that is rock solid. And in-person really can be your online one-on-one coaching. And like you can have that rock solid, right? If you have that sound platform, you can actually take the lessons and the experience and the conversations, the knowledge you have from all those interactions, and those become incredible inspiration. It's a muse for all the stuff you can create via social media or longer form content. And you can continue to show up. If your business is solid, you can take some of your time. If you're very efficient, I'm super efficient with Instagram. I built a big following off of writing short Twitter-based posts. But I also had the backing of, oh shit, he's writing for all these things that are credible. I can go follow him. That's how human brains work, right? That was very deliberate, right? That shit's in my bio. But I'm taking experience from working with people every day and the stuff that I've learned along the way and constantly refining the messaging, learning from it, studying the craft of writing because I enjoy it. The stuff is very fulfilling. It's not taxing, and showing up every single day. I was super consistent with it and it grew. And I realized that at first I'm like, all right, am I doing this because there's some sort of vanity element to it? But I quickly realized I'm like, no, there's actually, it's a big, long play. So if you're financially sound, you can actually make the long play of investing in all of these sort of free resources And it's about brand development. It's personal
Yep.
brand building, which is still one of the most valuable things that you can do in the industry. And there are opportunities that haven't manifested yet, but because of the way that I leverage my media, mostly just because I support other people. I love doing cool shit for other people. There's tons of stuff that goes on behind the scenes to where I can turn around and like recently I messaged Mike Dola. Mike's a good friend. I'm like, hey bro, I was thinking about this. Mike's like semi-retired, basically just sold Stronger You.
Yeah.
He's got just had a second kid. And I'm like, hey, can we get on a call? And he's like, absolutely. It's like free business mentoring from Mike. And of course it flips because then we get talking about the things that Mike wants to do that I have expertise in. So it's mutually beneficial. And then same thing with Nick Shaw, right? I asked Nick, I'm like, hey, can I grab a call with you sometime? I want to pick your brain on some stuff. I haven't booked it yet, but Nick's, oh my God, yes. So you show up to help other people, and then you can like cash these little things in. But even when you do this, you're still like trying to give to other people, support other people, plus they're your friends. Right? So I'm a big believer that it's the proverbial jab, right hook, Gary Vaynerchuk thing, except I really don't like throwing right hooks. I just like continuously giving and supporting other people. And then oftentimes the positive stuff that happens, I can still do it in such a way that it's so mutually beneficial that I'm not withdrawing. It's about building a giant bank of grace with everybody, your friends in the industry, your clients, your relationships, your followers, everybody who interacts at any point of your media. And I do believe that if we set up our house, our financial business house so solid that we can turn around and approach the rest of that with such abundance and a long play, an infinite game mindset, that I think that if you really want career success, fulfillment, and a road to probably put yourself in the best position to make the most like money long term, I think that's a really smart play. And I think the mistake people make is they impulsively, in the wrong ways, continuously make withdrawals from that bank of grace the moment they've earned anything, and their balance is generally zero, or they're bouncing checks all the time in that space. Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%. We all know, again, I won't say any names, of person starting a new podcast, or I wrote an article and, the one that I just like the most is books are long form. Oh, I just did this 2-hour video. Could you watch it and give me some feedback? And these are from people I don't know from Adam. I don't even know what this person has done. Like, I don't recognize their name. It'd be different if it's somebody I know. It's, hey man, I got a quick question about this. Cool. No worries. That's all good. No worries. But the expectation is this huge ask up front from somebody that you don't know.
Yep.
And then when you turn them down, they get offended. Would I love to help you out? Yes, I would. But the reality of it is I don't have 2 hours to watch the video. I just don't. And so I think if you're newer, exactly what you were saying, show that you are demonstrating that you're doing something. I could easily look up the person and find, oh, wow, they've written 400 articles or whatever, like something that's easy to verify. Then it's, okay. And the other part you said earlier, which I think is so key, is you went to these events. Like, you showed up, like you paid your money, you got on a flight from the Great North Land and crossed the border and did all this shit. Where to me, like, if somebody's at a conference, cool, you can ask me any questions you want. I'll talk to you forever. I don't give two shits less. You can ask my wife. It annoys her sometimes. But
Jody's wonderful. Hey, Jody. She's incredible.
And she's great. But because I know that person paid the money, they took the time, they probably took off work, they're probably taking the shorts right now to be here. So that tells me that they're committed to getting better. Or when you get that DM through your inbox, like, you don't know the person, you don't know. They put 5 seconds into an ask of something that you don't even know where they're at. So again, for people listening, build up and do some service. And if there is really a hack that there is, it's actually go to live events and honestly try to get better. Shocker.
Absolutely. I don't think there's been anything more important in my career. The inflection point that completely changed my career forever was going to the Fitness Summit in Kansas City in 2016, where I met you.
Yes.
And then I brought Dean Guido in 2018.
Yep, that was fun.
You and met Mike Dola. And we know how that changed his career. And he's still, to this day, one of my best pals. They're putting something together, him and Jeb. I met Jeb in 2017.
Yeah.
I'll finish with this thought too. I went to one of these events. I've gone to a lot. And someone who traditionally has done fairly well in the industry, who's I believe his star has faded to a degree. Once said to me, the people you meet at these events in the industry are not your real friends. And I'm like, oh. And then first of all, that showed me his attitude about everything.
Yeah.
Since limited interactions and little things I hear, it's like I noticed that it's like doesn't give much to support. Will pop up and make asks or things that will ultimately try to benefit him without necessarily being of service to other people. And social media is dematerialized into a lot of like really bad, dogmatic hot takes. We'll leave it at that. I'm not going to name names. I feel like the industry's passing him by a little bit as people who are media savvy and very collaborative and abundant have been thriving. But a lot of my great friends in the industry are people I've met through my travels that I look forward to
Totally.
seeing, who've been great supporters. And that doesn't change the fact that the time with my like close friends here in Edmonton, my best friend, I get to hang out with at the gym all the time. She's not in the industry. She's the one who built my original website just because I didn't know how to do it, which led to the writing. One of the best people in my entire universe. But the people I get to hang out with in my travels are great friends. I enjoy them. And a lot of those friends are lining up to come and hang out at my conference when I throw it in October. But a lot of them I've been able to create really cool opportunities for. I've been able to introduce to some of my editors. I've been able to link up with speaking engagements, and I am fulfilled by this stuff. And this is real. If you take this attitude that these people aren't real friends, you've got the completely the wrong mindset right from the get. There's so much good in this world. And if somebody is going to these events, I was able to make a good impression and become friends with. I wasn't seeking to be friends with Dr. Mike Gizzertel. He was one of the first people I met in one of these things, sat down, had dinner with him in a group setting. Mike's a good friend. And through him, Nick Shaw's become a very good friend. RP, they treat me incredible. But when I first met Spencer Adolsky, or I first met you, or first met all sorts of other Pete Dupuis, you treat people like they're people. And it was great to meet everybody in these environments. A lot of goods come out of it. But the real thing that benefited me was that first event. I also made friends with this guy who liked beer and barbecue named Tim Arndt.
Yeah.
And my buddy Jeff Aker, who turns out he's from Calgary, right? He's like Cape Bretoner from the East Coast of Canada, who sounds like he's a Texan who lives in Calgary and doesn't make it. Or Jeb Stewart Johnston, just a cool guy. He used to be a barber. He's a great trainer.
Former high-end New York hairdresser.
Yeah, and so on. And there's 50 or 60 of these stories just from that first event alone. And got everybody on Facebook, kept interacting, and then discovered, oh, Tim Arndt has this event in 2018, Inland Empire Fitness Conference. I'm like, shit, that's a cool lineup. Brad Dieter, James Krieger. I can't remember. There was a whole bunch of other really great people in that event. So I traveled to it and enjoyed it. And I met Chad Landers and a whole bunch of other really great friends, Mike Howard. And so I went back in 2019. And as my media blows up, Tim's the guy I told about earlier who said, hey, man, I want you to come in and fill in and speak at this event. Jeff Aker, I mentioned. Turns out, hanging out and having a beer with him, and oh shit, he's the NSCA Alberta provincial director who does the clinic every year. So I attend in 2018. I attend in 2019. I meet Robert Linkle and a whole bunch of other really.
Yeah, he's awesome.
He's amazing. And then come 2022, we get to talk. Before this, I link him up with my friend Hannah Gray, who is doing more public speaking. And so she ends up speaking at these provincial clinics. But then Jeff and I talk about me speaking at the 2022 provincial clinic. And then a guy from the Rocky Mountain Regional Board finds out about this. He's been following me. He brings me down to speak for the Rocky Mountain Regional in late 2022. I didn't seek any of this stuff out. The stuff just kept happening. Jeb Johnston, become really good pals with him. Again, bring Dean down the next year. They hit it off. They become best friends. Dean starts working for Stronger You and Mike Dola. And to this day, Jeb and Dean are business partners and stuff. And they're going to have me as part of their compound performance thing with Matt Domney and Kyle Dobbs that they're doing virtually. Like, the people on the same journey as you are the ones that you need to pay attention to, support, invest energy in, connect with on media, support unconditionally. Do not go about this stuff, again, making these withdrawals from this bank of grace with everyone. Just make deposits, nonstop deposits to do cool things to support other people. And I promise you, the industry tends to give you back more than you could ever ask from it or give to it. But you have to be patient.
Yeah. And I'd say on that note, it's longevity, it's almost like cockroach fitness. Like, even if you're not super good, if you can just outlast everyone else, you're good. We've been around a long time. We can probably name on both hands how many people have been in the industry for more than 10, 20 years. And then we're obviously biased because it's a lot of people we hang out with. But just think of all the trainers that have come and gone during that time. So it's like, if you can just stay in business and keep getting better incrementally, day by day, year by year, like, good things are going to happen, because the truth is it's a lot of attrition in the industry. The pro is, if you're not one of those, then it's easier to rise up to the top or whatever area you're at. So I appreciate that.
This has been fun, my friend.
Yeah. And where can people find out more about you?
All roads go through Instagram. So if you're not already there, you can message me anytime on Instagram. I will literally respond to anything. Just don't send me like long videos like you talked about.
I got a 4-hour video, bro, I want you to watch.
At Andrew Coates Fitness. And then obviously my website is www.andrewcoatesfitness. Articles that I get published in places are linked through there. But if I'm speaking at something, if I've been on a podcast, if my own podcast, you can find that through my media. The main one, Lift Free and Diet Hard. Mike's been a guest at least a couple times on it. If you want to go search, so go check out those episodes. But if anything, like if anybody who is from my media is finding this podcast through my media, the guys, like, just look around at who else Mike has had on his guests and check some of those out. You'll probably find some other people you like. Stick around. Mike is one of the smartest people in the industry, and I've long been a fan. I was very excited. Like, when I first met you, I'm like, oh my God, you're Mike T. Nelson. Like, I've been stuff on T Nation for a really long time, right? It's your generation that inspired me to start writing for them when I got the invitation. Thanks for having me on. And like I said, anybody has any questions again about writing stuff or media stuff, I like jamming on this stuff. So I'll answer your questions. Just shoot me a text message in. I will respond with voice, but send me text.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And I really appreciate you being so open and always super helpful to everyone. And I can attest that he does get back to everyone. He's not just saying that. It is a legit thing. And if you're at an event, you can definitely go talk to him. He'll be very nice, and he'll probably introduce you to 400 people you hadn't met yet, which is even better. So
love it.
Awesome, man. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for listening to the podcast. Huge thanks to Andrew for coming on the podcast. Always great to chat with him. Hopefully you guys got some good stuff out of it. This one was geared a little bit more to fitness professionals and fitness trainers, how to get a little bit more advanced in the industry. And if you are interested in the Flex Diet mentorship, I am doing it. We've got a couple spots left. However, the application process will close at midnight, July 21st, 2023. You'll be able to find the application below here in one of the links. So if you are interested, apply or just reach out to me, ask any questions if you need more information on that. Huge thanks to Andrew for coming on the podcast. Thank you for listening. Greatly appreciate it. If you have any feedback, by all means, please let me know. And I look forward to talking to you again next week. Take care.
What do you suppose they call that? A novelty act?
I don't know, but it wasn't too bad.
Well, that's a novelty.